recognize a lot of different faces from last month. It was at VML last month down at the downtown airport.
Do you guys know about the DevOps days happening next month? Do we get pitch that a little bit?
I'm signed up.
Awesome. Be there. You can definitely pitch it if anyone wants to hear about it.
Anybody else not know what DevOps Days is? Anybody not know what it is?
I've heard of it. Just about all I know.
Just go over to the camp.
And just to be sure.
No, just in case, yeah.
So DevOps Days is half conference, half unconference, which kind of sets it apart from like normal conferences. The first half of the day we have speakers coming in from like all over the nation, all the way from Seattle, New York, like from both coasts, and a bunch of local speakers talking about like either specific technology things or a lot of times just like the transformation that they've done with their business. So you can kind of take from that what you will. And then in the afternoon we have open spaces where very similar to this, people throw out ideas, then we vote on them, and you can walk away from any of the conversations. Like, if the conversation sucks and you're not getting anything out of it, you vote with your feet, which is super awesome. It's an unconference, right? So you don't have to sit there and like have some conversation that sucks. If there's some other conversation over across the room that like a different topic that you're like, okay, this one's not really going anywhere, you just walk over to it, which is pretty cool. Because then you get to talk with like people that were speakers that came in from far away, and other people in the because we figured that most of the attendees will be local people. You get to meet other people and actually interact with them. So a lot of times you go to conferences, you're kind of quiet. You go and watch things. You're like, that's awesome. I'm never gonna go do that in my company. Well, here you get to be like, he said he's in.
Oh, you said he's in?
Yeah.
You go to the other building? You move.
I'm excited for the part where all the speakers are joining in these open spaces, because normally you go to a conference and you just get to listen, maybe ask a question or two, and that's it. You don't get much time to be in depth.
Do you need, if he finds his way to the elevator? Huh? If he finds his way to the elevator, does he need a badge to go up or down?
Oh, but there's elevators in both buildings.
I asked if he was in 4850, is that the right one?
4950. The other one's 5,000.
Here's one of my favorite songs. I love funk.
Yes, we can stay down here future.
That's a fun fan that someone wants to go to.
What?
Kansas City.
And show me some trees.
Uh-oh.
Is it spelled weird, like
I don't know. I might just be like really surprised when I get there. What is it?
Yeah, so
sometimes that's especially when you're
Like,
it's like
The scene.
People are just gonna find out. Oh, that's
Always have a good time.
It's weird because parking lots don't really connect between the two buildings. They're the wrong one. You gotta go out and around.
do you have Slack?
Yes.
One-way road.
Can you navigate
Yes,
him
it
in
is.
Yes.
somehow? Thanks, Ryan.
Normally he's here.
So we have 10 minutes of presentation before he gets here. He'll find it, right?
Last time,
Ryan's
last
gonna navigate him in.
meeting, people in here from 6.
Hopefully.
If there is a little bit of traffic, from 6:15.
Okay, so CJ, you're gonna be up first, but let's go ahead and get started. Let me stop the flunk. All right, so let's get the September meetup fired off. couple of things. I want to thank NetSmart for hosting and the awesome Minsty's pizza. Super awesome. Applause.
Make sure everybody eats because there's a lot left back there.
We have DevOps days coming up. I kind of just explained that, but it's half conference, half unconference, and it's super awesome. I think there's 40 of them this year. I think there was like 16 last year, and it's a conference that just kind of like started up out of the desire for devs and ops to actually start working together better instead of throwing things over the wall. I believe it started in, I'm probably gonna get this wrong, either Belgium or, is it
I
Belgium?
think it was Amsterdam.
Amsterdam?
Something, one of the, yeah, that will.
Somewhere, I'm obviously American, I don't know. It's like somewhere that I don't have the money to go to that's probably super awesome. Yeah, but not in the US. And then from there, it just kind of exploded and bloomed into something that's really awesome. So it's half conference, half unconference, and there's a lot of interaction that goes on, which is pretty cool. So similar to tonight, we're going to have Ignite talks, which are these 5-minute talks where we go super rapid fire. And then after that, we have a lot of discussions and stuff, so you can talk about like the topics that were there. We're also going to do open spaces tonight. As always, follow us on Twitter. I'm going to post the videos on Google+. And does anybody have any announcements, any jobs or other conferences or things? CJ?
If there's any Java developers in here who also want to work with Chef, AWS, and Docker, that's senior level-ish, there's a job open on my team that we need to fill. So,
Where's that at?
Federal Reserve Bank.
Federal Reserve?
Yeah, a cool area of it, not the normal stuff.
The awesome area of the
Yeah, the
Federal
awesome area of the bank. So, yeah, if anyone's interested or know someone who might be, let me know. I can give more information about it.
We're always hiring here at NetSmart too, so we just hired one DevOps guy and then we're looking for another one, but we do a lot of PowerShell stuff, a lot of Puppet stuff, Jenkins, Mongo, if you know Mongo, we're familiar with it, and then if you have any experience with infrastructure, that's always a plus too, because we kind of function across the spectrum in what we do, so.
Do you put DevOps in the title of those roles?
We did until recently.
What made you guys change?
Traction on postings. So we switched it to automation engineer.
I have a personal beef with putting DevOps in the title, so I always like to hear how other people are handling it.
See,
It's more popular. I guess if you go out and search Indeed or something, you'll find a lot of posts for DevOps. Not as many for site reliability engineers or anything like that, but we just seem to get traction on the job posting.
I still think we should change all of our titles to DevOps engineer. I think that's awesome.
I falsely give myself one on LinkedIn because my title is like information specialist something or some stupid thing like that.
Oh, come on, you know what your title is. What's your title?
Like information specialist or something like that. Or
2, 3, is there a number after it?
there might be a number after it. Yeah.
What is it? Is it a 1?
Either 4 or 5. I don't know. Something like that.
Sounds like somebody who works on top of this. Just casual.
4.
Welcome!
Found it!
I'm blaming Google.
I always
The
blame
invite you
Google.
sent directs me to that one, but the address says 4950.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Which is why I was so confused when I got
I got to the parking lot and I was like, this is the right place, and I just happened to pick the right building to go to. Probably just I didn't see the other one. We're doing announcements. Do you have any announcements? Is DSC hiring?
Soon we'll have some openings for platform stuff. So OpenShift type stuff,
Oh, that's cool.
Kubernetes, yeah. But nothing to announce right now.
We already went over DevOps days. We should just go over it.
Everyone here can make sure they have it.
I saw some of it on YouTube.
Oh, yeah?
I was watching because I was trying to figure out, can I see where they're at from the room?
You were watching it too, Gavin?
No, I will not. This is live streaming, man.
Any other announcements? Cool. Well, again, thank you to NetSmart. This is super awesome space that we're in. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to CJ. You're going to kick us off. And I think I've got it on 15 seconds, but it's floating a little bit. So if you're going by the clock, you might go on 16, and then later you get the thing. That's good. So I don't know how much you practice that.
I practice but without the time, because Google doesn't give you the time option.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll walk away in 15 seconds. And then we got, I'm after you.
Well, I'm CJ, working with Ed, and I'm talking about some technologies that I used recently, which is creating a Docker container with Packer and Chef. Forget the Docker file. Docker file is never used in what I'm going to show you guys, which is pretty cool. So what is Docker? I'm sure a lot of you guys know what Docker is. Really popular right now, but it creates containers that encapsulate all of the things, file systems, code, tools that you need to run your application. And the second item is Packer, which is created from HashiCorp, and it creates images for various platforms such as AWS and everything else. And Chef, like Puppet, Ansible, the infrastructure automation tool, which uses cookbooks, which have recipes and templates in it to automate your infrastructure, code installation, software installation, all that good stuff. So Packer is split into 3 parts: your builders, provisioners, and post-processors. And we'll go over each one of these items. So builders first. This is responsible for creating the machine and generating the image from various platforms. So it'll communicate with AWS, spin up different types of virtual machines, spin up a Docker container to run your code against. And there's the provisioner, which this is what is happening inside of the running machine. So running your cookbooks, running your shell scripts, anything that you need to be done to your image to be fully usable after you're done with it. And then the post-processor, which is after the image is complete, what does it do with that image? It can push up to repository. It can send it as a tarball if you don't want to put it to a repository that you can import to Docker. It has a lot of different options. So here's an example of a builder. This is the first block of code where we're saying that we want our builder this time to be Docker. That could be AWS. We want our image to be Ubuntu, which it will pull from the Docker repository. And we want to commit. We can also pass Docker run commands such as privilege and image variable. And here's an example of a provisioner, which we're saying we want a shell command that adds my user. And then down here, we want our next one to be Chef. We're running it as a Chef client, connect to our Chef server, dev, and we're putting the role we want to run against. And then we have an example of a post-processor, which is saying that we want to tag this image as nginx to our Docker repo, and we want to push this image to our repository. And this will all be done when you run Packer build in your script. So at the end of the build run, here's the finished product, which I'm going to try to get to. Wasn't sure how this, I don't know. This is the part I was worried about.
Ribbit.
There we go. Oh no. There we go. Okay. So here is the finished product. This will, if you have the valid entries in here, it will kick off a Docker container with a CentOS image, run yum update, run your Chef client through it, and then tag the image and push it to Docker. Docker Hub or your private repository that connects this. I need to go ahead.
It's a little screen at the bottom towards the right.
Okay, so what happens during this whole process? Packer will spin up a Docker container on your machine. it will register this container as a client in Chef, which is pretty cool. It'll run the shell commands, run the recipes, tag a new image, push it to Docker, Hub, or Nexus. And what's really cool is it'll then kill the container and it'll deregister it from Chef for you. So you don't have to go through and do any cleanup. It should be done. So why do we want to do this? This allows you to build really complex containers. If you want to, you can mimic actual VMs inside of a container for testing, utilize resources more efficiently because Docker utilizes a server better than running your code on one server. So my use case was I needed more build agents. AWS costs lots of money. Docker containers utilize server resources more efficiently, and to build software something. And my use case number two, the second part to it was that I created a Packer template that would install Bamboo, all the resources needed to build against in these agents. And it actually installed a full database running ×10, which is an in-memory database inside each container. And then I have a blog post where I go more in depth into this on my Twitter account as I can be. So if you want to read more in depth in it and maybe understand a little bit better.
No need to, you just let it go.
Oh, I still go. Oh, sorry. There we go. 2 seconds. That's
Yeah. I practice.
Neither did I. I'm not even sure what I wrote.
Well,
It's making me feel a lot better.
so I'm trying to figure out if 60 seconds in between is too much or not enough.
I think it will be at the end. Maybe 30 seconds is enough. Or 60? That would be too much. 30 would be fine.
60's safe.
No.
It feels like a long time.
Let's look dangerous.
Hello there. My name is Blythe, and I'm going to try to convince you to change your password. So that's what the next 5 minutes will be about. I'm not going to lie. For over a decade, I've hated seeing the emails or pop-ups that told me to change my password every 90 days. It was anxiety-producing. I would have to remember this password. I have to type it in umpteen times. But password data breaches are all the rage these days. Very popular websites have been breached in the past couple of years. Chances are that your username, which is often your email address, and your password has already been leaked. You can quickly check this by going to haveibeenpwned.com. About a week ago, 500 million Yahoo accounts were breached. The fallout from this is still completely unknown. I'm not here to teach you how to hack. It only takes a couple of hops once you've taken over an email account to get full control of a number of other accounts. So I started really simple a year ago. I use LastPass, which is now part of LogMeIn. I pay them, but they also have free options. However, there's alternatives, and that's good because that spurs competition. So this is not a specific sales pitch, it's just what I happen to use. If you've never heard of LastPass, when I use it in the browser, it'll prompt me to remember my password whenever I go to the site. For the past year, I've simply clicked yes, for the most part, just passively storing my existing passwords. The best feature that I have is that I no longer have to remember my passwords. However, the second best feature is that I can tell it to use upper, lower, numbers, special characters, and pretty much every website has different rules, and I've been using this to get random passwords. LastPass also has a security challenge as part of their service. I decided I'd go ahead, take the challenge, and see how I was doing. I'm going to share the results with you now. So to be honest, it was actually a lot worse than this when I started. I collected over 300 passwords passively over the course of the last year. My practices were not terrible, but I was still ended up in the top third of all LastPass users, but now I had a game to play. So I had 6 sites that I didn't even save the password because I used LastPass wrong. In many cases, I simply used the launch button inside of LastPass, and it was like temporary EC2 training devices and things, so I cleaned those out. I cleaned out like 50 of them. Which brings me to what I would do on stuff I encountered that was really something I no longer needed. There was no guarantee anymore, if there ever was, that sites had not leaked your password, right? There's also no guarantee that they do any type of cleanup. So before you actually close your account, you want to make sure that you're changing your password to something random, because that can get leaked later on with the password that you actually use on other sites. I was really surprised to see that originally there were 4 passwords that I had that were likely compromised based on the website that I was logging into and the amount of time that I had since I changed my password. Luckily, according to I've been pwned, none of them were actually put on the payslip. Here's the part that really took some time. I sat there and opened up many websites. I slogged through that dreaded dance of change password screens, email links, text message codes, and each website was slightly different. Quick note on the duplicates. This does not mean that I used the same password for 99 sites, although there was one particular password that I was using on a plethora of sites. I wish this worked a little better because there are some things that are wrong with that duplicate. So I had to talk with my wife about setting up LastPass because there are things like Netflix and Hulu passwords that are needed for all the devices for the kids and stuff. This was a really hard conversation because the only experience she had with LastPass was our banking software, which was a terrible experience, right? You should also set up multi-factor authentication. For those not familiar with this, there are services that produce a number that's only good for about a minute, and then you use this in addition to your password, so you have 2 pieces. So after an 8-hour journey, I'm much more satisfied with where I'm at. Now in the top 3% of LastPass users, I have an awesome master password which I can remember, and I've got an awesome security score. So my recommendations to you are to select a password manager and use it. At least passively. Collect all the passwords. Remove your junk and clean up. Log in, change your password, and then close accounts that you don't need to use anymore. Change all of those pwned passwords immediately. Don't use the same passwords for multiple sites. Find a way to level up your shared passwords and use multi-factor authentication. The Bureau of Justice Statistics estimate that 17.6 million Americans, about 7%, have been victims of identity theft. And in the last 6 years, there's been $115 billion that has been actually stolen using identity theft. And that's
I feel inspired to go home and do
I started using one password, it's like LastPass. It's different.
If we all go and do that, can we bump you down like top 4%?
Oh, I'm still working on it. That was just the first 8 hours of this journey.
8 hours, that's not put in.
Mostly I was watching Mr. Robot, you know, and that like heightens the paranoia.
Great. I'm going to talk to you about the new view on human error. Has anybody here heard of the new view?
Awesome.
All right. So there's the old view, which is what I'm calling it, which is where you count absence of negatives. There's retributive just culture, so that's like a crime system, that kind of thing, or even firing people. You blame the individual. The goal is to fix the individual, so you're focused very much on that the individual caused the problems that you're having. And that's the way that the criminal justice system works, and a lot of other systems and enterprises have worked. The new view is where you're counting the capacity for positive action. So you're looking at what kind of capacity does everyone have for being able to fix these problems and innovate around these issues that come up within the system. It's very much a system focus, so you, instead of blaming the person, you blame the system. There's a restorative just culture, which is all about healing the person and the system and the second victim, first victim, things like that. Are there benefits to incidents? The old belief is that the lower number of incidents equals lower number of fatalities. What was actually found is that the lower number of incidents actually increases the number of fatalities because you're not learning from those small mistakes. So I just find comparisons with continuous deployment where you're constantly failing small. If you fail at all, you're failing small, and you're learning from that, you're growing constantly. And then if you're not doing that, then the failure builds up in the system like waterfall, and then you have a massive failure when it does fail, and you have no idea what the heck goes on. So other reasons for this is that when you have a low number of incidents, it's usually because people are discouraged of actually reporting incidents. So sometimes people will try to fix them and then not ever report them. If you often don't learn from your near misses, which is a big problem. When you get a near miss, you should, if you're a very mature culture in this, you'll learn from that and be able to stop a failure from actually happening. There should be a system focus in the new view. We're finding faults in the system and fixing them there rather than trying to fix the person. The goal is restoration, which is healing the system, healing the victims, and healing second victims, which are usually people you say cause the problem. That's the second victim. So like nurses that do something like an overdose for a child, and then they commit suicide later or something. That would be a second victim. That's a story in Sidney Decker's deck, so you can go watch it. It'll be in the resources at the end. It's a pretty powerful thing. Punishment, I still think should go out when there's malicious intent or there's purposeful illegal activity. When you're at your business, particularly around firing somebody. There's a scenario I'd like to cover really quick where I've written a little blog post and I want to get people's feedback. So that's kind of what I'm asking for here is to go read it really quickly and then give some feedback. Where there's a network engineer, a business unit VP. Business unit VP is yelling at the network engineer to make a change. The network engineer knows that there's a CAB, a change advisory board, that he has to go through to make that change. But the business VP says, you have to do this now, and so he does it. There's an outage, and then he gets fired. So, and nothing happens to the VP. It's something I can't mention, but something that's been in the news recently. So there should be consequences, but to those, there will be consequences from those outages. But when you fire somebody, you also get a low trust culture. The VP continues to do whatever he wants. The system never actually gets fixed. You're probably going to have a much bigger failure the next time. And likely, these people are making these changes all the time with no failure at all. So it's a part of the culture. So go to that. It's just my medium, Barker D427, and make comments. And these are the resources. So the first one is just the high-level website. The second one is a really good page. So Sidney Decker wrote a book called Just Culture, and it's a really good page that really goes in depth. The second one was courses, which there's 4 or 5 videos on YouTube, and there's links there on that third link that you can go to and see like lectures from him. It's pretty awesome. So, and then there's something else on there. But John Allspaw uses his books over at Etsy for their incident response stuff. So now you know a little bit about it.
Could you show that link you want everybody to visit again?
Yes, maybe. Is there somebody after me?
Not in this deck. It's a separate deck. So
Okay.
Yep.
I will. There it is. Nope, that's it.
It's a wonderful.
P.
There it is. So, I don't know how to put mouse on. So that's really the part you need to have remember. It's just Barker D427. We'll post these out too.
Yeah.
So I'll post them maybe right now.
Yeah, just put them right in the meetup notes or whatever.
Yes. Is everybody on Slack?
No, just like on meetup.com.
Yes, I can do that too, but is everybody on DevOps KC Slack?
Should be.
All right. Good.
If you're not, let's show that link real quick.
If you're not, raise your hand. We'll let
Can I close my crappy fist?
I was trying to interject in the system.
I think that Dan already posted this in the general room, but if you want to go to DevOps kc.herokuapp.com, you can sign up for our Slack and jump on there. You may need this up for a minute.
I think that's where a lot of the conversation from this meetup, from this week goes on.
Yeah.
Meetup.com kind of helps organize these events, but I've seen quite a bit of day-to-day conversation. Slack seems to be a new communication app, and Aaron's really embraced it with this group.
I'm Soyi, work here at NetSmart. I'm actually going to talk to you about our DevOps journey, what we've been doing over the last 8 months or so, how we've been kind of incorporating into what we do. So who are we? NetSmart, if you don't know, we're an ISV, so we write software for healthcare, mostly behavioral health, addiction management, substance abuse. I actually work in NetSmart Plexus Cloud, which is our cloud hosting division part of NetSmart. So what do we have for challenges in our cloud environment? So we've got a vast catalog of solutions that we have to support. We have siloed, disjointed teams and workflows, long signed live times. We have a lot of snowflakes in our environment as well, which can be a nightmare. So where did we really start our journey? We went through a data center refresh. So we went through and introduced a lot of new technologies that were really tailored towards software-defined, policy-driven, and open API type environments. So where do we go from there? Well, we needed a methodology. We needed to be able to spread the word internally on what we were doing and really build a movement around something. So we needed kind of a flagship for that movement. So we defined this as kind of our napkin statement. So what do we do? Where are we going? What do we focus on? So we put together a Cloud Ops value quadrant, which really outlines kind of business value level of effort. So we had a good, juncture on where to start automating. Then we went on to build our framework. We tried to assume or use agile thinking, introducing DevOps principles, and really build towards a flexible and speedy and agile environment. So those are some of the tool sets. So first thing we did, get organized. So we got Jira. We use it internally for our dev team. So set up a project in there to really organize our work streams. And we've also got Bitbucket, so source control on our code. We like PowerShell. I talked to you about this already. It's flexible, it's object-based. We can move fast with it, and we have a lot of experience in-house with PowerShell. So what are we doing with PowerShell? It's pretty good. We power our infrastructure with it, so how do we do that? We wanted to take kind of a microservices type approach to PowerShelling our environment. So what we did is we built PowerShell modules on top of many platform REST APIs to drive the deployment of our infrastructure. We had to drive our code somehow. We can't have everybody running command line execution, so we introduced Jenkins. That sits as our UI on top of our PowerShell, and we're able to provide a UI to our ops users, our back, also gives us some history controls. Then we introduced MongoDB to help facilitate some of the CI/CD processes that we were going for. Basically, we shove in all of our artifacts into Mongo that are created during execution. We're able to roll back and also introduce unit testing during that time. So here comes Puppet. This is, we landed on Puppet. We liked Hyra. Roles and profiles, we use them extensively, and we also had some in-house Puppet experience and a code base to go off of. So what do we do with Puppet? We drive our application from the OS on up. So OS configuration management, application deployment, and we also drive some of our monitoring utilizing Sensitive. So how do we marry those together? In Sept's Mongo again. So not only do we push artifacts from our PowerShell into Mongo about what occurred during our execution, we also take parameters in during our Jenkins execution and run to feed in HIRA data into our Puppet environment. So I get asked this question a lot, why Mongo? Well, we love REST, we love JSON, and utilizing REST hard on top of it, it makes it pretty simplistic for us to do what we want to do. Also, no SQL, if you're not familiar with it, it's pretty flexible and dynamic, and allows us to make a lot of changes pretty readily. So how do I know what's going on in my environment? Well, we have integrations into Slack, so we push notifications from Jenkins into Slack on build status, build history, and we also are feeding in some monitoring data and alerts from Sensitive. So what does the full ecosystem look like? If you want to look at, this is what we put together over the last 8 months, all the bits and pieces. Infrastructure is driven by PowerShell, Puppet on driving our application deployment. So we've got that in place. That's a framework. That's what we're using today to deploy applications. Where are we going from here? We're integrating more tightly with our dev teams. We're driving our dev teams to actually integrate or incorporate APIs in their applications, so we have better reach into the applications to do the full extent of deploying and configuring those applications. And some of the stuff we've learned, poorly defined undocumented standards, or time suck, which I'm sure you guys are aware of. I don't remember what the middle one was, and the other one was evangelize. You got to talk to people about it, get buy-in from communities, stakeholders. Otherwise, you get pushback, and people don't like to change. It's human nature. So yeah. If you have any questions about it,
What do people push back?
what's that?
What do people push back? Programming everything?
What if people push back programming?
What do people push back on?
Culture
stuff,
change.
things like that.
People inherently are behavioral focused, so they get habitual about doing X, Y, and Z processes. So when I tell them you can't do that, or we're going to do it this way, that's not the way it's done, or you don't always get the buy-in from people. And some of that just comes from not understanding. Some people just don't like change.
It's not DevOps, it's just
It's a cultural thing. It's really a cultural thing.
Awesome work, guys.